Everyone's filing in. Good evening, all. We'll get started in just a minute. I'll just wait for everyone to have a chance to jump in. I'll just wait another 30 seconds just to really give everyone a chance. All right, I'll kick off. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the fourth and final webinar for our free short course on Applied Digital Marketing Strategy with Andrew Mashman. This short course is presented by our team masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. And you may have noticed that you are not currently listening to the dulcet tones of Guy Coward. Tonight, you've got Chantel Hale. I'm the MC for tonight as Guy is away, and also the IT Masters CEO. We're joined by Hannah as an admin, and you'll notice her in the chat. And she has reminded everyone to please change your chat to everyone instead of hosts and panelists so that everyone can see your witty comments. Thanks to Hannah and Andrew for joining us, as well as our guest speaker for tonight, Charlotte Barry, who hopefully has jumped in so far, but who knows. Standard housekeeping, as we're on Zoom, please use the Q&A section for all questions you'd like Andrew or Charlotte to address. And if you have any general comments, or if you just want to expand on a point or just make general chit chat, etc., etc. If you have admin related questions or something's not working or the audio's not working properly or something like that, you can put all of those into the chat function where everyone can see you. Again, if you change your to function to everyone instead of hosts and panelists. And without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Andrew Mashman to get started on tonight's webinar.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thank you very much, Chantel. And the upside of having Chantel on deck with us tonight is she actually owns a smartphone and knows how to use it. So that's one of the variations from Guy. Anyhow, all good here. And given we are talking about digital media, smartphones are incredibly important, as we've seen some of the data on that over the last few weeks as well. So tonight, we're just going to roll through some material as outlined in our schedule for session 4. I am going to flip a couple of bits there. So I'll talk about this first bit on the left here in a second, but we're going to deal with actions for customers, analytics and tracking, and then we'll probably introduce our guest speaker, Charlotte, and then we'll go back into our digital plan template, which we've been working on over time. I've done my homework and I've populated most of the boxes there, and I'm going to discuss those with you tonight so that you can kind of see how the template works and the digital aspects, which are going to hopefully make this plan and this startup of mine a real life thing. So there you go. Also today, and Hannah would have done this for us, which is great, I shared an article which talked about fashion, and it's a report, and there's a snapshot on the screen there for you on the left-hand side, which has done quite a bit of customer profiling, and it's gained all the information in the report from social media usage. So it's a very digital centric research piece, which is kind of good. And also it collates with consumers and consumer behaviors particularly. And so this one here, it categorized some groups of people into outdoor bliss tribes. And I'm imagining that that's actually come out of the lockdown spaces that have been going on around the world. This is a largely global survey. So the outdoor bliss tribes are people who are really striving to get outside. And then they've segmented that into 3 particular groups as well. So collective ranges, and there's a particular look and feel for them. And this is about fashion, clothing and accessories after all. So you can see some stuff in that particular picture. We've got solo escapists, and for people who like their kind of independence in their own space, I'm thinking that they fall into that. And underneath each of these boxes, you can see some detail about this. And then the city nomads, and I'm guessing they're the frustrated global travelers who have been waiting probably at the airline gates to get on a plane to get out of the country, which for those of us in Australia here, that's becoming more and more of a reality, I think, from the 1st of December. So the cool things about that is particularly it's about segmenting audiences into particular groups that you can know about, which is really core to our strategy as well and what we've been discussing here. And then in this case, they've been listening to social media particularly to come up with these customer groups. So it's really got a nice synergy about it, given what we've been talking about as well. I wanted to mention my social week, and I think we touched on this one last week for just a second, but I have to say, since I've mentioned Ninja Shark AU, it is everywhere in my life. It's just like Siri or the Google equivalent is listening to me. And in all my social media feeds, bar LinkedIn, the old Shark AU's popping up there. And then I went, geez, what's going on with these guys? And so I had a look at that. And there's a snap there on the middle of the screen is a Facebook shot. The right side of the screen is the Instagram shot. So when I better Google them and see what's going on here. And then, so this is a Google shot on the left-hand side of the screen there as well. So Ninja Shark AU is doing a lot of great digital work, and they have a very integrated campaign running from search. So you search anything about shark or Ninja Shark, and it brings up pretty much the same material. They've got the graphics things sorted. So they have put up graphics in lots and lots of their posts and tag them as being Ninja Shark AU. And that's what brings them up into this top kind of graphics box there as well, which is, it's paid supported as well. So that's an ad space. The second part down the Google screen is also Ninja Shark advertising and owning the top spot on Ninja Shark or Shark Ninja search. And then third part there is their organic search results, which are in the bottom part of the page there. And again, well organized. It goes on to about collections, etc. So here we have a business which is selling kind of spontaneous purchase items and certainly Christmas presents, stocking stuffers, as some people referred to them in the chat comments, but doing probably very, very well with it across Instagram, Facebook, I'm sure other social platforms, and Google. So I'm calling this as an integrated digital campaign from Shark AU. I'll be interested to know if many people on this list here tonight turn up with any Ninja Shark accessories in their Christmas stockings this year as well. Cool, moving on. Another thing which crossed my desk this week is Jill Stark is an author and a former journalist for The Age in Melbourne. So she's got a bit of a profile on Twitter and she does a bit of work there, but just this week she's been trolled for expressing her enthusiasm for being able to go out and dance in Melbourne at a wedding as well. And I just thought I'd just show this example here that Big B33 guys has been kind of crass in terms of a comment to her, which is kind of interesting. And then when she's kicked back to it, he's gone as far as blocking her from his feed, which seems like such a petty, and for someone who's clearly a bit of a bully, a very, very petty thing for them to do. So this is just a current example of trolling. This lady, Jill Shark, has sort of gone for the jugular, though, I suppose, in terms of feeding it back to that person and engaging a much more sympathetic audience than what this guy got in terms of his stuff as well. So that's just a bit of an example of the highs and lows of social media and how that can sort of fall out in real time for individuals as well, which is very unfortunate at the end of the day for this particular lady, but she's probably coped with it and handled it very well. There you go. And just to quickly introduce Charlotte before she arrives, you'll see her pop into the feed in a little while, I'm sure. We're due in for about 10 to 8 or 8 o'clock or so. But Charlotte, I just wanted to mention, is a senior communications strategist. So she's up to her neck in this game at the moment for us. And she's an ex-CSU alumni. She's been a student of mine at least once or twice, probably in her undergraduate degree. But she represents the I guess, the enthusiasm of youth and the ability to get things done. And she's really, really well respected in her industry and in her space at the moment. She's even run the Junior Lions Award. And I think I've got some more stuff on that one coming up a little bit later. So look forward to that. We'll be able to get a few questions off to her as well before she goes also. There you go. So let's talk about module 4, stuff that was on the agenda for tonight for sure. And one of the first things that comes up in this list is actions for customers. And you'll remember from my template the other week, we'd written some goals. So goals which reflect what I would like the target market to do. And if you remember back, and we'll have a little bit look at it later, we're talking about a startup here, which is called Humans of Earth. And it's a pre-death or a post-death Facebook, with a very quality spin to it. And we'll read some more about that a little bit later. So I created 4 goals for that. And what I'm just going to give you here is why these goals are particularly important as we get down to this tactical, applied execution phase for my startup, as it would be in this case here. So the first one there is to create some awareness and interest. So remember the AIDA model. And in this case, I'm going to do it by advertising in amongst the ancestry search results. And I've had a look today at that, and there is very, very little advertising goes on around ancestry searches. Yet the linkages, or from my point of view, the perceived, ability to leverage their business onto my new startup business, I feel is very high. So that's my perception for that. And I've got a date on this goal about doing it between January and March 22. So the action that I'm doing here, which I want consumers to get involved with, so is using keywords and ads. I want them to click onto my site link. That's going to build traffic for me. And part of landing on my site is going to be to ask you to sign up. So very action-orientated behaviors there, moving you from awareness and interest, and then hopefully to either returning and signing up or signing up directly while you're there. And if we wanted you to sign up directly while you're there, we could give you some kind of trial or maybe incentive, even a price-based incentive to make that happen. My second goal was to create desire through free trial after sign up for all site visitors and offer that as an ongoing thing. And I think if you are, and I've called my people the kind of torchbearers for families, as it would be, as my target market, then once they get a feel and a taste of this or can sample it in some way, which is very hands-on things to do, then they'll develop, oh, wow, I could actually make this work for me. And that would be really good. My third goal was to facilitate and encourage commitment. And commitment is another word for me, is for action, because at commitment, you've put your card over, you've done some kind of transaction, you've committed for 12 months, 1 month, you've done some kind of action, which as a human and as a customer, it's kind of difficult to do. You want a good quality value proposition to do that. And so we're not just going, oh, here, quick sign up here. And as we saw it, TikTok made me buy it with plastic plate dividers. This is a bigger, more intense, high kind of value decision-making proposition here. So we want to facilitate that to action. I'm going to run some tutorials. I could run them both live. Also, I could run them pre-recorded when somebody ask a question about something, so I could use my bot to say, oh, quickly have a look at this, maybe a minute 40 tut on this particular topic. Same thing, tips floating up, so we can use a tool like WalkMe to put tips up over my website as well, and promotion of benchmark public pages. So as we mentioned early on, we'll have the choice of having a private or a public page. When we get some public pages, and we might even do some famous citizens ones from stuff that's available freely in archives and not copyrighted, then we'd use them to promote out there to get people, again, interested and desiring, and hopefully going, wow, if they could do that, I could do that for myself as well, or for my family as it would be. And the timing on that goal goes through to June 22. And the actions there is to provide tips on how to, show examples, and get people to build a simple tribute site, as it might be. Last one there is build advocacy. So if we talk about the funnel again, advocacy is right at the bottom there. And when you've got advocates for your brand, we mentioned they might be wearing a Harley Davidson tattoo or an Apple tattoo on the other arm. And if they've got both of those, they're fairly committed to both those brands. Then these people are the ones that in the surveys you do, would you recommend this brand to someone else? And they are the ones who will do that. So when we'll get one person first, and then we'll get 5 people, then we'll get 10 people, then we'll have 100 people who will do that. And when you've got 100 people, you can start to exponentially grow what's going on. So some of the actions to get them to become advocates would be to reward people for referring the site to other people, maybe friends, other family members, etc. Gamify progress to a certain extent, and there's a lot of theory around gamification of anything, and people generally like the engagement, getting a reward, doing some more engagement, getting another reward. So we would work on that in terms of your site or your tribute site build. We would regularly, but not annoyingly, survey and seek feedback on how the software is working. So we're very customer focused, and we can keep building the tech platform to represent that quality tribute to a past person or a person who's, got a lot to share about their life, etc. as well. And then we would take some of that feedback and testimonials out onto social as per our plan, which we'll get into a little bit later. So I'm calling this goals to action. It's really important to capture goals that work for the strategy of your business and what you want to actually achieve, be it a not-for-profit or a charity or whatever it might be, but actually design actions that you can do and are doable, rather than having one goal that says create awareness in 50% of the Facebook users, so 1 billion people. That wouldn't be that useful to me. It would be very expensive to do, and it'd be quite hard to measure at the end of the day whether that actually happened or not. So that's goals to action, really important part about our plan and making things happen. This is just a bit of evidence to support that. This is a couple of Google searches this morning. So first one up there is a Google search. Let's say I want to capture my father's family stories. He's been an explorer, he's done this, he's traveled the world, etc. So I want to capture my family history. And that was the search I did. And I did a couple of variations of that as well. And this is exactly what comes up under that. So there's no advertising for a start. So nobody's advertising around keywords about family history or capturing family history for that matter. So that means it's quite open to potentially get into that space. And then there's really limited tools there. There's, a wide article about how to do it, which is really about getting your video camera out and making that happen. There's also a bit of stuff on a range of things to do, but we are much, much more sophisticated than that. So we've got a lot to add in terms of Google search for this particular challenge. So around your own brands and your own challenges and your own products and services that you're looking to promote, get into Google search and see what's going on. Also, really careful as you search, as you type into the search box, watch what else is coming up, because that gives you some evidence about what other people are searching on around some of the words that you're using. And that actually can lead you into a space where, wow, lots and lots of people are searching about this kind of thing. This is maybe where I need to be with my product, my SEO or my SEM as it would be as well. Further to the right side of the screen here, we've got a search for ancestry, which was spelt incorrectly on purpose. It still brings up ancestry because they know that ancestry and ancestry are likely to be a very commonly made spelling mistake potentially. So it brings up an ad first place for ancestry. And then secondly, it brings up their SEO result, their organic web result. But you'll notice that there's no other advertising here. There's no other competing brands on this page for my search. And that could be a little bit because of my geographic location as well. And we'd want to do some further work into that. But it highlights how my particular actions around SEO and SEM are going to be super important so that I can move forward and start to achieve the goals of my brand. Now, the next topic which I wanted to talk about also was about analytics and tracking. And I was actually going to ask, there you go, maybe Hannah might have just popped that one up there too. Can you pop up the links to Alicia Booth's analytics course too, Hannah or Chantel? Because Alicia, if you haven't found her, and she's at Alicia Booth on Twitter, you can find her that way. I probably should have put her address up there. She's a rock star in the digital marketing analytics space. She's been a guest speaker on this course in previous years as well. And she's done a whole analytics course, and in her role with the number of e-commerce brands that she works for, then she's done some great work there. So there you go. The link is up there. Click on that. Have a look at that course. It's another free course like these ones here, and very valuable. You can also make it a subject within your master's or your grade cert for this, the promotion that we're sort of doing around here as well. So just in terms of data that's coming back out of different platforms, I just picked out LinkedIn here first. I've got 2 screen grabs from LinkedIn. I just went through my posts, and the highest circulating post which I've done in the last month is this one here, which you might have seen last week, which was taken on a beach. It had a beach shot and it had a dog in it. So it was clickbait at probably the best of times. So I specifically did it that way. And this one here in my feed has had 100 views. And so that's a very, very basic information. And there's lots more information you can get from LinkedIn when you get into it. And certainly when you start advertising in any social platform or on Google or on YouTube, there's a huge amount of data that can come back from that. But even from LinkedIn, we can see here the shot on the right side of the screen there is all about who's viewed it. So we can see that a range of people from different parts of the world have viewed it. For me, I know WPC Group is someone I used to work for as well, Melbourne-based organisation. Fairview, 2 views there, interesting. One of my former students, or 2 of my former students work for that organisation, I think, as well. So maybe I'm not reaching very far just yet, but nevertheless, you have a feel about the kind of people who are interested in that. We can see titles of people who viewed this posting as well. And we've got some university people, some marketing people, some business development people, etc. Some business analysts down the bottom there as well. And we can see geographically where they came from in Australia. And clearly I've got some really good, and I do have good cut through into Sydney, and then sort of at a secondary level into the Melbourne space. Even at the most basic level. And for me, you know, we're just doing a little bit of posting here, so I don't have big numbers to work with and to demonstrate to you, but it gives you information about who's doing what with what and who's interacting with the kind of stuff that you do. I know on the whole that the next post below this one or above it did around 25 to 35 views, which is far, far less than this particular one. But I know from this that the content of this one had a particular impact on that as well. So that was kind of cool. Just showing you some snapshots here from Twitter on this slide for us too. And so this is just giving us information about how digital campaigns can be measured in the most basic sense, where there is massive amounts more depth involved in this. And Alicia, and I'm sure that Charlotte actually will talk about some of that stuff as well. So this is just 2 snapshots of Twitter 12 months apart for me. And you can see there that I've had a pretty quiet year, so lockdown, I wasn't doing a lot of social media, but just in the last few weeks, I have lifted it substantially. And you can see that impressions have listed by nearly 300%, which is pretty good. Number of tweets is listed by 360%. And so there's some big changes there with very simple changes to behavior. And so if your organization is just posting on a little bit of an ad hoc basis, a little bit here and there, not adding the hashtags in and those kind of things, then you know, your numbers are going to be low. And simply by ramping it up around, and for me, it's about doing a course like this, that I start to actually use it a little bit more so I can demonstrate change here, then that's what helps me to make that happen. You'll see there my top tweet of last week is the beach shot. So again, beach shot dog, we know it's clickbaitish kind of material there, but around 2,000 impressions on that one, which is good. And ultimately has grown my business. You can see also for the previous year before that, then there's been some changes in the way that's worked out. Top tweet at the time was to do with a mention as around someone else. It does use a couple of the hashtags and stuff as well. And also there's some stuff about bushfires, which was a bit over 12 months ago as well. Who would have thought? Last one in terms of some analytics stuff here is a link to Hootsuite. And so that's a video there which you can click on in the deck and have a look at their short video. Hootsuite is probably any sort of organization's preferred tool, and tools like it, Social Sprout, Social Status IO, etc., because they allow you to look at multiple social media networks in one in one place across a number of dashboards usually, and they can show you what's going on in that space as well. On the right side of the screen, we've got channel analytics there for YouTube, and down the bottom there, we've got Facebook Business Suite, and that's some of the, you can see the wave there of my posts in Facebook. And again, very small polling on that page, so the numbers aren't really great, and it's a 6,000% increase over the same time last year, or over the previous month, I think it is actually. And we can then dig into individual posts and get a lot more data on how each of those individual ones actually performed. And then through that, you get to fail fast or fail forward, however you want to call it, because you'll see a post is not performing, it's not meeting your goals. So you can quickly substitute it, change it, re-edit it, re-pitch it. Maybe it's on the wrong platform. Maybe you can re-look at where your target market is sitting and how they're going to work for you as well to make that work out also, which is good. There you go. And so I'm a little ahead of my schedule, but I see Charlotte's hanging around down there as well. So I'm going to hand over to her very shortly. Chantel, do we have any questions or anything you want to talk with first?
There's not a lot. So put your questions into the Q&A so that we can get to them. Hannah has helpfully included a link to that Alicia Booth digital analytics course. We had one question. What is a WalkMe in simple terms?
Cool. WalkMe is an organization, actually. So if you just Google or go www.walkme.com, WalkMe is probably a a digital transformation tool, they would call themselves. But what they allow you to do is overlay your website with a bunch of guides, sort of tutorials. Click here, fill this part in next, go to this next space. If you don't understand what it is, it's like a help button. But it's far more than that. And people can use it inside their organizations for the likes of call centers, but you can also use it outside of your organization for customers to make sure that they are getting the most from your website, navigating through, etc. So there you go. It's a commercial organization which does exactly those kind of things. And what it does help particularly is companies adopt to digital transformations where they maybe are not as digitized as they could be, but they can kind of move into that space to make it happen. That's cool.
Yeah, that's about it. So remember, if you have questions, to put them in the Q&A, because if we don't have any, then we won't get your questions answered.
I'm just putting that website into the chat box down there as well, so you should be able to have a look at that one. Very good. There you go. So Charlotte's there. I'd like to welcome Charlotte along tonight. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, she's been a student of mine, a student of Charles Sturt University. She's been had a very, very busy career, and I just wanted to add that like many of my students, like many people who are online tonight, full of life and enthusiasm, seeking the next thing, and it's a really optimistic part of the world that Charlotte operates in now, in the marketing, comms and strategic area. And she's been involved in the 27, well, she was a silver water to silver medal in the 2017 Cannes Young Lions media competition. That's just a mouthful, but that is an international competition. Charlotte, you might be able to tell me if you're involved in the IAA awards as well, and your red or blue team won that probably at the time. And so Charlotte's done lots of pretty cool things. She's working in the industry, so she's going to be able to talk us through some issues about strategy and communication and digital properties tonight for sure. And to that end, I think I'd like to welcome you and hand over to you, Charlotte.
Hey guys, sorry, I don't know if my video is working.
It isn't, but that's understandable. We can make believe.
Okay, cool. So you'll just hear my mysterious voice.
There you go. It is it's a bit like that too, but there you go. Cool. All right. So do I need to hand over the share of the page as well? Stop the share.
Yeah. Can I have my video on, or is that not possible on this?
You should have.
You definitely should be able to have your video on. Yes.
Oh, it just says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Well, I'll make that allowed.
There you go.
I just feel like it will be really weird if I'm talking as not even a floating head for the next 20 minutes.
Try it now. There we go.
There we go. Hopefully that works.
Perfect.
Hi,
that's really
guys.
good too. And you should be able to share your screen as well now, I think, and that'll take it away from my screen.
Right. Yes. Okay. Hopefully this works.
So you're a home office worker at the moment, or are you working from the office?
Yes, I am a home office worker. Like most agencies I've found haven't really returned to work. Let me know if you guys can see that. Awesome.
We can, thank you.
Yeah, most agencies haven't really gone back to work. I'm not like, I think some have. But my agency certainly hasn't, and neither have any of my friends. It's quite funny actually. If you guys end up going to CSU, or if some of you already do, you realize that you actually never really leave your little CSU crowd. So most of my friends who work in agencies, we all went to uni together, and there's this little thing called the CSU Mafia. And if you ever need a job, you just like post in the CSU advertising group, and there's always someone that is there being like, oh yeah, we can get you a job. Or do you know this person? Do you know this person? So it's a pretty special uni. So I hope you guys have been enjoying this course. It sounds awesome. I was tuning in for the last half an hour. And I'm super honored to be asked to come back and talk and give back to the community, because it's super, super important. So I guess a little bit about me. My name's Charlotte, and I am a communications strategist, which is a bit of a random name. Most people are like, what actually is that? So I guess I'll tell you by explaining my background. So where I started working after I left CSU was an agency called and that's a media agency. So that is an agency that buys advertising space. So it's all about understanding the consumer, what screens they're watching, places they're going to see ads, and then working out the strategy of where you actually place the creative ad. I then moved on from there. I worked there for 5 years and I was a strategist there to CHE Proximity. And I was a copywriter, which is a creative. So that's the people who come up with the ads. And now I work at InOcean, and that is my new job title, which is a comms strategist. And it is a hybrid of creative and copywriting. So conceptualizing, coming up with the idea, and also strategy. So it's kind of my dream job, which is really cool. And across the years, so I've worked in the industry for 6, going on 7 years now. And I've had the absolute privilege of working on some of the largest brands in Australia and also in the world, which, like, you look back, it sounds like a really big deal, but I don't know, the industry is really great to young people. And they really give you a chance, especially if you show initiative and show passion for what you're doing. Whilst these brands look massive and it's like, oh my God, wow, like I could never imagine working on that. You just have to put up your hand, and quite often agencies will really give you a go. So I started out on Meat and Livestock Australia, so Australian lamb, which you guys might know some of the hilarious Australia Day lamb campaigns that happen every year. And then I moved on to Coca-Cola, which I probably have never learnt more on one single client in my entire career. Like, it is the most well-oiled marketing machine. You work with the best creative agencies, you work with the best clients, you work with the best strategists. Given I kind of look back on it now and I'm like, oh, I do feel a bit guilty, given that I am quite an environmentalist. But I did also get to launch all of their recycled packaging. So understanding how a business that has previously been the biggest brand in the world goes to the most hated brand in about 10 years was actually a really, really interesting experience as a strategist to work on, especially when every business wants to recruit teenagers, and teenagers are very, very pro-environment. So it was really interesting. Then I moved on and I worked on Lion Nathan. So they have like all the beers. So you probably know like Kosciuszko, Furphy, 4X, Tui's, worked across that portfolio. Nestle, like Kit Kat, what else do they do? Like Soothers, not all of it's glamorous. Tourism Australia, American Express, and all of these clients have sort of got different business problems. So it's really interesting in advertising because you actually get to work on a lot of different categories. So one day you're like selling something that costs $2.50 for a consumer. And then other days you're working on a Hyundai car, which obviously is the second largest purchase that a consumer will ever make. So the strategies are really different, and it gives you a lot of experience in understanding the way that people think and interact with brands and different categories, which is cool. Like, you get to just learn. You have a really broad understanding of communication, which is awesome. Most recently, and probably my favorite client I've ever worked on, is Australian Marine Conservation Society. So they're a new client that I've been working with. Working with scientists is really epic. They don't really understand the way that communications works because they're dealing with such complex problems. And our role as communicators is to communicate those complex problems in a really simple and bite-sized way. So working with the most intelligent people I've probably ever worked with on a cause that is so important for the future has just been one of the best things I've ever done. So yeah, comms is awesome. You can work on kind of whatever you want. You just have to put your hand up. So as I said, my role is kind of hard to define. And even in my own job, sometimes I've found like people still don't get it. I think one piece of advice that I would give you guys is that make sure that when you're in a role, try and be able to explain what you do pretty simply, because otherwise people don't have any time and they also don't care. So the way I explain my role is that I solve problems, I come up with ideas, and then I make those ideas work, and and work together. One thing in agencies is that there's often like a lot of different people's opinions and people's perspective, especially when you work with a creative agency, a PR agency, a media agency, and being able to integrate thoughts and to have a really broad understanding and show how an idea actually lives in the world, how people experience that idea over the period of time that that campaign is in market is really invaluable. And whilst it sounds very logical, not many people do it. So there's not many communication strategists around. So when you meet another one, it's always like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do this? It's quite a cool little crew that we have around the world. So when Andrew asked me to speak, he said, can you speak a bit about strategy and speak a bit about digital? And I find those two words very nebulous. And that's nothing against anything that Andrew has asked me, because everyone talks about strategy and everyone talks about digital, but everyone has a different opinion and a different definition of it. And when I started in my career, I used to look at the strategists who worked above me, and I didn't start as a strategist. Most people don't. I started as a media buyer. So I was the one that was like doing the IOs and filling out the client's bills that they just bought an out-of-home panel on the side of the road. But I used to watch the strategists walking around with their post-it notes and doing all this big thinking. And I was like, oh, I want to do that, but I don't even know what that is. But strategy is not as complex as what people love to make it sound. Quite simply, it is working out how to get from A to B. So I quite like to visualize it. If you were on the top of that mountain and someone next to you said, we need to get to the bottom, you could go 360 degrees and you could get down anyway. What a strategist does is look at what the weather climate is, what the forecast is, who else you need to get down that mountain. They look at all the different kind of clues and the scenario and know the goal, and they work out what is the best way of getting down that mountain. And then whilst they're getting down that mountain, they're keeping people on track. So instead of 360 degree different versions of getting to your goal, you have one direction. And direction is probably the word that I would describe as something a strategist inherently has within them. It's like a sense of this is what we have to do. But it's based on facts, and that's very important. Some people have a natural sense of we should do this, we should do that. But something that's very important, especially when you have clients that are paying you $100 million a year in agency billings, you need to have rigor and you need to take people on the journey as to how you got to that direction and give them the trust that that direction is actually right and that you're not going to fall off that mountain. So strategy is getting from A to B, and it's having a direction. But as I mentioned, storytelling is a really important part of strategy, because whilst you might see a problem or a task, for example, and you go, the answer is this. Most people are not in your brain. I'd be very surprised if you found anyone that was. So you need to tell a story and you need to take people on the journey. You don't just need to take the client on the journey, you have to take your whole team on the journey. So when you work in an agency, you work with a whole team of people. So there's a client management person, and they're the ones dealing with the client. There's the strategists, they're the thinkers. There's the partnerships people or the creatives, they're the ones that come up with the idea. And then there's the people who execute that idea. You have to bring everyone on the journey so everyone is on the same team. And the best way of doing that is by telling a story. There's a pretty simple way to tell that story, and it's foolproof. And something I always like to tell myself, especially if like you get a task and you're like, this is impossible to solve. It's not. And strategy is really simple. The answers are always out there. It's just about doing your research and talking to people, and you will get to that answer. So how to tell a story? Start with the task and the objectives. So what is your end goal and how is success measured? This isn't something as a strategist that's on you. Your client needs to tell you what is the task, and you'd be really surprised at how many clients actually don't do this. The other thing you have to be super aware of is how is success measured. So if the task is to grow your business by how much? It has to be measurable, otherwise you are set up to fail. So I thought I would also provide a bit of an example that we could step through. So this is a recent brief I've been working on with Australian Marine Conservation Society, and our task was all around sustainable fishing. So the task was to jolt Australians to think twice about their seafood and educate more sustainable choices. So what's the problem that we have to overcome? The problem is what's stopping us from getting there. What is the barrier? You're probably going to think of like multiple barriers, but that gets very confusing. We have to be single-minded. So what is the key barrier? The key barrier that we found is that simply telling people you can't eat seafood is an unsustainable message. You'll either get people who go, okay, I'm going to quit for a week, and then they just like a crash diet, don't do it. Or you get people who are like, that's too hard, I'm just not listening. So the key barrier is just saying don't eat seafood isn't going to work. Next is your audience. So who are you talking to? Which group of people will help you meet the objective? So this is what we call the fresh salmon enjoyers. The people who go, oh, wow, salmon in Coles is $12. They're well-intentioned because salmon is being marketed as a really green alternative to protein. But in fact, it's really, really bad for the environment. So they're misinformed. So, the task, the problem you're trying to solve, the people that are going to help you solve it. How do you get to the strategy? Insights are crucial. And I always used to find insights really confusing. I'd be like, I don't know what an insight is. An insight is actually just an interesting fact. So all you have to do is go and talk to people, do your research, and find out what is happening in culture, what is your consumer thinking, what are the competitors talking about, and what's your brand purpose. So you find different facts. So I've just sort of summarized some of the ones that I found really useful. One is that people find sustainability super overwhelming. The second is that the salmon industry is positioning seafood as a really green protein alternative, which is just called greenwashing. So people think they're doing the right thing. And the third is that consumers can't add another climate problem to their list. So they're kind of just not really interested. So that all of those things help you get to what the opportunity is for your brand. So for Australian Marine Conservation Society, how can we help answer what the problem statement was? So what we answered is that instead of telling people to stop, help them to swap. And then you get to your strategy. Make a swap for the sea. So the strategy is actually the most simple statement of all. And it should, when you land that strategy, give the audience this sense of, because if you started with the task is get people to think more about seafood, and you said the answer is make a swap for the sea, people are like, what? You have to take them on that journey so that their head is actually already gone, yeah, of course, I actually already thought that. That's the goal. So a good strategy is a single directional sentence. And a really good structure for writing a strategic, like what a strategic sentence is get, who, to, buy. So if we break out that platform, it's get Aussie fish lovers who are well-intentioned yet misinformed to choose sustainable fish with pride by making a simple swap with the sea. So that sentence, you should be able to give it to anyone. You should be able to give it to the client. You should be able to give it to the junior person on your team. You should be able to give it to your CEO, and they will understand where, like, the direction that you have taken that brief. Digital strategy. So many may beg to differ, but I don't personally believe in digital strategies. I believe in strategy. There is one strategy. The digital strategy does not differ from the overarching brand strategy, because the strategy is, going back to what we said before, is how you get from A to B, how you achieve your client's objectives. Digital is the way that strategy is executed. So the strategy can be executed through digital touch points, through your Facebooks, through your Instagrams, based on who you're trying to target to meet that objective. But digital is the way you execute versus the strategy. The strategy sits above that. Just because a client says digital, and they say this a lot, doesn't mean you use every single digital channel. So one thing about strategy is that you have to learn when to say no, and actually doing less is often so much more. So it's all about putting the right message in the right context. So like I mentioned before, the strategy sits above everything. So your strategic platform is, say, make a SWOT for the C. You've got all of these touch points at your fingertips, and you have to think, I have a limited budget, usually. How am I going to communicate, make a SWOT for the C? So the first thing to do is understand, and you already inherently know this, but to really stop and think about how people are using these digital channels and what the role of those channels are in consumers' lives. So often you'll find that people are using YouTube and Facebook as their key sort of video consumption. People are scrolling, people are actively leaning into these platforms to view content. It's not really two-way, it's a voyeur type channel. So that these are our mass awareness video channels. And then you have Instagram and Pinterest, and people like going on there for relaxation, for inspiration. Then we have TikTok, which is obviously huge, and it's just blown up in the last year or so. Now every client wants to be on TikTok, which I would argue is completely wrong for many of them. But TikTok is all about discovery and playfulness. Then you have Twitter, and that's all about new news. So what are people talking about? There's often a lot of overseas content on there. And then LinkedIn, which is the business lounge. It's where people network. So based on the roles that these different channels play in people's lives is how you then execute your strategy, and you talk to people in a natural way through those platforms. The worst thing you could do is to build your idea into a 30-second film and put the same film on every single channel. Because if I see an ad that was in a MasterChef commercial on Instagram, I'm going to watch half a second, and then I'm going to be pissed off with the brand, and I'm going to scroll through because it's so out of place on that channel. We talk a lot about thumb stopping content, and I kind of get that to a point. Like, you do want people to be engaged, but you don't want to disrupt someone's user experience. You want to add value to that. So once we understand the roles of those channels, how do we execute the strategic platform beneath? So we know that sort of the mass awareness channels, they're the ones to land your key message through video. So if we're thinking, I thought it would be good to use an example, pull through that sort of Marine Conservation Society Good Fish campaign. We would show our campaign TV ad fit for the platform in YouTube and Facebook. In our inspiration channels for Instagram, for example, where we know storytelling content works, people are looking at like different influencers they love. Maybe that's where you actually have recipe content of like the best sustainable seafood recipes, and you talk to different influencers and you get them to cook some of those items. For Pinterest, you could actually take some really beautifully shot recipes and then you put those in the Pinterest feed. For TikTok, you could do the same sort of thing with influencers, but you do your creative cooking classes. With Twitter, you could use your key stakeholders from Australian Marine Conservation Society, and you could actually get them to tweet the PR launch, because you know that this is a probably more business savvy audience. And same with LinkedIn, you get your key stakeholders to publish opinion articles that is a much more sort of business centric than your more consumer education piece that's in the more mass mainstream social channels. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So what do we want to think when we're thinking about digital? One, just be normal. How do you use the platform? How do other people use all these different platforms? And therefore, what content do you create from a brand that actually suits and fits that context so that you don't annoy people and that you're actually adding value to their experience? So last but not least, hopefully I haven't run too over time. I just thought I'd leave you with a couple of points as to how to be a good strategist, if that can be defined. One is never stop asking why. in any situation, because you need to be hungry to learn. You need to be inquisitive. You need to understand why someone 65 thinks this about one subject and someone who's 16 thinks this about another subject. It's so important to understand that you personally are almost never the target audience. So you need to keep asking people why they think what they think, because a huge part of our job is understanding customers and their purchase behavior. The second is that we make complex problems simple. It's pretty much our key role. People in the room often look to strategists and they're like, what does this mean? And the answer that you want to give does not have heaps of jargon. You don't want to pretend you're trying to sound smart by throwing in all these words that you don't usually use. Just speak in layman's terms. People love it. It's all about simplification. 3 is stare at people. So often when you talk to people and you do research and you ask them why they've bought something or what they think about certain things, they'll actually tailor their answer and they won't tell you the truth. They'll tell you what they want you to think about them. So one of the best research techniques is actually just to watch what people do and how people buy things. It is also useful to talk to people. You can garner great insights from just having a good chat about why people have bought things. 4th is actually one of the best tips I've ever heard, and it's from my old CEO. And she said, make sure that you learn your client's business problem. It's pretty obvious, but make sure you also learn your client's personal problem. So what's going on in your client's team that's kind of making them agitated? Do they want a promotion? Are they getting blocked by getting a promotion? And then how can you help your client to achieve their goal, and how can you help them overcome their personal problem? Relationships in our industry are so important, like so important. 5th, make sure you read the news every day. You have to understand the context of the problems that we are trying to solve, and that is how you get people's attention in meeting rooms. It's not about being super focused on the tiny brief. It's about understanding how that brief operates and works in context of a broader setting. And 6th, and most importantly, have fun, because our job is so fun. Like, I can't believe that I get paid to do research and come up with awesome ideas and to talk to people and to be amongst people who are just so curious about changing things and behavior change and just doing awesome things and coming up with campaigns. And I think a lot of people in advertising get really bogged down in the trenches. Sometimes you got to come up for air and go, we actually have an epic job. So thank you so much. Hopefully I haven't bored you too much. You might have taken 1 or 2 things away. And if you do want to get in touch with me, I'm so open to having a chat. There's my email address. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not on it often, but I will try and check it. And good luck.
So we've got a few questions just before you head off, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Tracy started asking, how do you change your strategy to different generational audiences at the same time, given that the workforce currently has baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, and alpha, etc.? How does this impact budget, messaging, engagement?
Oh, that is a really good question. So are you saying, how do you reach multiple audiences for one campaign?
Yeah, basically, I think that's the question.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good question, because you'll actually find a lot of brands don't believe in targeting. So there was maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, there was a real trend of, how do I stop sharing this? There we go. There was a real trend of segmenting your audience to really, really small numbers. And it's recently been found that actually segmenting is not a very efficient way of growing a brand, and that human beings have pretty, regardless of your age, have got pretty similar thoughts and feelings about many big issues. So if you're working on a big consumer brand like an FMCG brand, you often don't change your messaging. You just have to tap into a more universal insight. With digital, it's pretty easy. I'm thinking of an example, maybe like an Amex is a good one. So you'll often have one overarching platform. A good strategic platform should be able to reach everyone, doesn't change. And then you will build different segment groups, and then based on the interests, I would build sort of like consumer profiles. So say we have a teens one, we have a corporate, and then we have a retirement. You would look at all of their different interests. What are their relationship with the category? What's their motivators of what will make them want to get a credit card? And then you would take the platform and you'd build different messaging for each of those audiences, and you would serve it to those audiences on digital. But usually you have to, like, a really strong brand doesn't have 3 separate messages for 3 different audiences. You should mean the same thing.
Can I just dive in there as well, too? I think the trap that Tracy's sort of fallen into is that people automatically assume there's going to be some sort of demographic segmentation for everything, but that's just plain not true anymore. You're better off to target on, as Charlotte pointed, an insight about a behavior, or someone's interested in the environment or the sea, as it might be, and then that cuts across demographics clearly and doesn't let you fall into the trap of, you know, thinking that you have to do something for each different demographic separately.
Great. That definitely makes sense. I won't try and keep you for too long, because obviously we've got the rest of the presentation to go as well. But one of the questions here is, how would you approach hard to reach audiences, those not digitally savvy, or do the ones that don't follow mainstream channels?
Funnily enough, it's actually more hard. It's more difficult to reach people and know that you've reached them on digital channels. So reaching people who are 65 plus, for example, you sort of know exactly how you reach them. You reach them on TV and you reach them in print. And there's research to back up that those are the sort of 2 key channels. It's harder to reach people and know that you've reached them on digital because of the way that tracking works these days. So that's a pretty tough question to ask, to be honest. I think everyone can be hard to reach at different times. One thing I would say, and I don't know if this is controversial to say in like in a digital presentation, but traditional channels, I always found to be sort of somewhat demonized when I was younger. Like, oh, no one's watching TV anymore, and no one's going outside, and people aren't going to the movies anymore because we're watching Netflix. It's actually really wrong. Some of the best way of building brand awareness is actually still through television, followed by YouTube, followed by cinema. So it's really important when you think about digital. It's an amazing channel, but you have to think about it in context of the whole marketing mix, because there is a role for the traditional channels as well.
Yep. And last question, I think, to look at here is, how do you know if a strategy is not working? Because I feel like this is relevant to what we're talking about there. Is there a way to know if a strategy isn't working or achieving its objective?
Yeah. So if a strategy is not working before it gets implemented, you usually know pretty quickly whether, like, your team doesn't like it or your client doesn't think it's going to work. Before we test a strategy, before we create assets, for example. So often the strategy will then guide what the creative brief is. The creatives come up with multiple territories, and that goes into testing. So people sit in rooms, which arguably is a really shitty way of testing stuff, but that's just the way that we live in. They'll test 3 different sort of messages, and then consumers will say, yeah, I didn't get that. That wasn't my outtake. Or, oh, yeah, that's really strong. So you'll do pre-testing. And then now in the digital age, it's pretty easy to test whether digital stuff's working, just based on analytics. So a good client will actually leave a message in market for a long period of time. Like if it tanks after a week, you'd be a pretty weak marketer to pull it when you've spent $500,000 on the production. But yeah, usually you'll work with a third-party research agency, and they will do quarterly dips. So they'll have maybe like 4 questions, 5 questions about the brand, whether people have seen it, whether they like it, whether they think it represents them, etc. And they will ask those questions 4 times a year, and then you can actually see the ongoing traffic and whether people are saying yes or no. And you hope, based on your strategy, that it's successful. And if not, you have a pretty hard conversation with the marketing team, and you pivot and you change. There's so many checks and balances though, that like I would never be scared of a strategy failing. Like I can't say that I've ever been in one of those hard conversations, to be honest. Like there's so many people above you and around you that are there to help support, make those decisions, that it's not really risky.
Great. I'm sure maybe Andrew will touch on it at some stage, but I don't want to keep you too long, and I don't want to keep our audience too long, but we might pass back to Andrew for the rest of today's webinar.
Cool. I just want to say a massive thank you, Charlotte. I think maybe the only thing you've learned from me is how to use your hands to communicate. I'm loving that, actually. I'm really, really up for that one. So congratulations. You've done well in your job and your career, and that was a really hands-on, good indication about things that are important to people in the communication space. And that's really what this course is all about. We are focused on digital, there's no question about that. But, and many organizations and some startups and growth hackers will be all focused on digital, but there's a whole portfolio of ways to reach different consumers around different things. So you brought that to our attention. So super cool.
Definitely. Thank you for coming along
tonight. For coming along tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Good
Have
luck.
a great rest of the night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Excellent, guys. That was fantastic. There was so much good information there. I'm enjoying that information. Hopefully you guys do as well. And it just gives us a different perspective. And I did like the particular focus on, the storytelling thing. And we talk about storytelling a lot, and it's sort of glossed over a little bit, but you have to be able to explain yourself. And whether you're talking to a friend or your partner, or you're talking to 10,000 people who might like to sign up for your product or service, you have to be able to walk through that. And if it's too complex, it goes over their head, you've lost that opportunity. So the storytelling kind of model and understanding around that is really good too. And the other piece I particularly liked is the thumb-stopping content, which we know people move very, very fast through Instagram particularly, and TikTok, which are designed for sliding through. But thumb stopping is important if that's your brand, you want them to stop on and take some action around that. So super cool. Thanks everyone for that. And thanks very much, Charlotte, again for that piece. That was terrific. I'm just going to keep chipping through our deck now, and we're back down to talking about how the template comes together for you guys as you exit this course this week. And we've covered all the slides in there, and I'm just going to show you or demonstrate how my slides work towards the end of this for my potential startup. We're on this page here, which we did in the second week. It's the Lean Marketing Canvas, and it's a way to capture the essence of all of your kind of challenges at the moment for your brand or your product. We start off with goals at a very high level, that top left hand corner, and for me it was build a basic beta testing platform that'll get 100 users on it, etc., by a particular date, which is coming up in the future. And the second part about that is the target audience, and the target audience thing is kind of taken for granted. And Tracy's point about how are you going to reach different generations, and that's why I dislike demographics intensely, because it pigeonholes people into a slot of supposed likeness. But that's often, and in fact, more often than not, very, very problematic. So saying that a Gen Z cannot relate to a product that a boomer likes would be highly risky. There'll be some middle ground. There'll be some need to, around climate change, for example, around reducing fossil fuel usage, around swapping from salmon to more sustainable food sources, as it might be. And demographics may not come into that at all. They might influence that, but behaviors, psychographics, geographic reasons, other ways that we can potentially segment audiences is the most important thing here. So keep that in mind as you're heading forward. And that also, when we dig into, and again, Tracy's other great point about some people are very hard to reach, and it's true, yes, they are. But the more we know about them, the better chance we've got of finding them. And we might find a person who doesn't have a TV set, they're not buying newspapers anymore, but we know that they catch public transport along the same route every week. And so that billboard where the train stops at a particular station might have particular cut through with that particular audience of, in the UK, they talked about people cocooning during the 90s, where they went inside, they bought big TVs and stereos and air conditioners and big comfy lounges, but they didn't come out. They stayed inside that space. So when you've got a very particular behavior like that, we need to work out where are the best places to reach those things. So hence the target audience things becomes very, very important. You see the other stuff there, we've got it there. It's for you to use and look at. I think the inclusion of some graphics, which is a shot of my whiteboard there, very poor photography. It was very hard to take a photo of a whiteboard, actually. And then the graphic down the bottom there to talk about the progress of the staging of my startup to get it to go live. It was great ways to communicate. And we are, in this case, creating a communication for potential shareholders or investors, and often potential users as well. So moving through the steps, this is the core of the template, which you can use the canvas to leverage as we go through the digital strategy and digital tools, etc. So we're going to work through those and have a bit of a look. I'll move quickly through the first ones because we did discuss them last week, and then we'll spend more depth on the later ones. So we've got mission, vision, and values. This just helps us understand where we're at, what's going to be important to us. Things like values will be very important about how we're going to promote or talk about ourselves on our website. Come in, buy one, get one free. We don't care if we rip you off or not. That won't be part of your values. So when you go to promote your business, make sure that you're reflecting the values and the mission of your organization. Second thing we did was do a quick and dirty SWOT analysis for the firm. All my text is in the red there. Anywhere where I had dots on the end of it, I'm still working on that, and I haven't made any changes to this particular one at the end of the day. Strengths and weaknesses I can control because they're in the gambit of my control over my organization, so I can work on those. They may cost money, but I can work on those. Opportunities and threats come from outside of my organization, and so I need to know about them and understand them like a target market so I can move forward on those ones as well. And particularly families and individuals wishing to document beyond the Facebook feed was an important part of the motivation for this business and for finding the target audience for it. So we can see that reflected as well. We then moved on to a SWOT analysis. And again, I'm using my hands here. Thanks, Charlotte, for that. We're raking through the SWOT analysis, and we're dragging out things that we think are the most important things that we need to do to move forward within this planning period, within this digital communications plan. So for me, platform content quality is going to be super important. This doesn't need to be another Facebook because there's a lot of competition in that space. It needs to be unique, and the target market wants a memorial, a tribute to somebody in their life to make this particular startup work. I changed the word here, build the brand. I think engagement I might have had, but I want to actually build the word that I've adopted now, having thought about it more, is advocacy. And we know at the tip of the funnel is we've got a group of people, again, Harley Davidson, Apple wearing tattoo people who are going to go out of their way for my brand. They're keen to do that. They're keen to invest. They're keen to talk about it with their friends. They're keen to make things happen. The third thing is the best tool to document life through customer feedback. So we're going to build a tool to document life, but we're going to grow it and evolve it and change it through regular feedback, and it probably should say more users, and through customer experience rather than random customers' feedback, because we're not going to value that as much as well. We also went through and we developed a kind of target market. We used some demographics, and for me, it was more about education level than any age-based thing. And high levels of education are likely to set the scene from what I know and what I've researched as well. There was some geographic stuff about key Western and high respect countries, so I can actually go out and get them and draw them on a map, communicate that to my stakeholders and investors as well. And there's a bunch of other things as we move down there, which helps me understand them. And then at the end of the day, I've come up with a name for them, which I'm using in the rest of my plan, which is called family torchbearers. Doesn't say if they're male or female. It doesn't care if they're old or young, but they are family torchbearers. And as we mentioned, and with Christmas coming up in your own lives, there'll be someone in your family who is that family torchbearer who remembers the stories, archives the the photographs and the literature from the family and is able to share them back again. So my target market is family torchbearers. Then we set some digital goals. You guys were working on this again last week to tune it up to. My first goal was to create awareness and interest. So thinking about the funnel again by advertising on ancestry-based search results. So we looked at that very early in the session tonight. We saw there's some gaps there. There's no other competitive advertising going on in that space. So I think we can buy our way in at not too much of a high price to get in amongst the research results for Ancestry around our product, which I believe has kind of got synergies with Ancestry at the end of the day. I think it'll be reasonably low cost, so that's good for my plan. Chantel, you might be able to tell me, how much does it cost to get involved in, say, digital marketing courses on Google? Because that is a very hectic space.
I actually can't tell you. I'm really sorry. I wish I had that information at the tip of my hands. I don't.
There you go. And you don't need a number. That's okay. But when you go to search results and you see that there's 5 or 6 advertiser space above the first organic result, and we know the organic results will be very heavily worked towards being at the top of the organic cycle. If you're a startup or if you're new in that space or you don't have money to spend, you're not going to be on the first page of Google at all for that. So I think it's an option. Second point here. Create desire through free trial after sign up for all site visitors. And we're going to do that on an ongoing basis as well. So the free trial is a mechanism to learn about how our platform works. And you have to sign up. Your cost for the free trial is to give me some of your personal information, which I'm going to use to be able to go back to you via email, maybe by other mechanisms in other forums, because I've got your email address, etc., to get you to move through the funnel a little bit further. My third one is facilitate and encourage commitment, which is action through the tutorials, the tips, and we talked about action, goals to actions for consumers. So we want you to get involved. We want you to load up a bit of stuff. We want you to do that. And then we're going to do some promotion of public benchmark pages through to June 22. So we've got that SMART thing, measurable. Charlotte referred to that methodology as well. Last one there is to build advocacy. So the pointy end of the funnel as well through measured great experience. So that's through survey results, through testimonials again, and then promote those exact experiences back through our other channels through to March, from March to June 22. We're not doing it from the get-go because there's a learning curve. We're going to have some bumps. We're going to have to relearn, relook. We're going to have to relaunch some stuff. We're going to have to change some platforms. But I reckon by March, we'll be in a position to go hard for the next 3 months or so and grow our customer base heavily from that particular point of time. That's our digital goals, which are then going to drive our digital strategy. So what does my digital strategy want to achieve? And as, again, Charlotte mentioned, we're looking for the path from the top of the mountain to the bottom based on things that popped up in our SWOT analysis, based on the values of our organization, based on the ambient terrain around us, etc., based on the competitors, etc. So I've written a kind of a statement here, which is capturing this, and I could use it to communicate to an agency, to stakeholders, to investors. And I'm sure it could do with improvement, but it's there at the moment. It's what we've got. So my digital strategy is to intriguingly and respectfully appeal to my innovating, early adopting family torchbearers, target market. I'm going to go to it using limited channels, so very specific choice about which channels. I want to use them impressively. I don't want to be spread too thin across a range of channels. I'm going to use my own channels particularly. So my Twitter handle is one of the first things I'm going to use too. I'm going to minimize my exposure to paid advertising because I'm cash poor at this early stage of my launch. And I want to drive the interested family champions to a trial of the service as quickly as possible, and then on to into inclusion on our database so that we can then continue to have that one-to-one, more direct, low cost, more efficient conversation, and coming out of that, encourage their sharing and testimonials so that I can use that to grow the audience. So using them like influencers to influence people who are like-minded, who they probably know, who probably hang in their social circles, to say, oh, have you heard about this? Did you try this? What about your dad's got great stories? Let's capture those and load them onto the Humans of Earth site. So it's a statement which is going to help us frame up things. And that statement has then helped me frame up the digital tools that I've chosen to deliver my plan. So for all of you guys, you've got your vision, mission stuff, you've got some goals, you've got a strategy picture like, oh, where are we at? What are we going to do next? Then we're going to consciously make some decisions about which tools to choose to, in this case, I'll show you on my project plan next up, we've got a stage 1, and then we move into a stage 2 set of behaviors later. And that's a topic for another another time for sure. So first of all is my organizational website. I can actually get the extension .earth, so I can be humans of .earth, which might be kind of unique and a good differentiator in its own right. So that's a domain thing, which I can do, which is good. The website is an owned tool. I'm going to establish the brand, establishing a responsive website. Responsive says it works across mobile platforms because we know 54% of internet's consumed on mobiles these days. With the service offerings, so the tribute pages, the ways to do tribute pages, instructional videos and tutorial support. So that's the goal for that. So a lot to do there. This is going to be a hectic website. The target market is my family torchbearers, or FTBs as we'll refer to them from here on. And again, when you're using a graphic or a table like this and you want to communicate it to other people, go light, be concise, be pointed around that too, to make that happen. Timing, ASAP, we want to get the web established as soon as possible because it's a major component. Well, it's the single biggest component of our platform to make it public, I suppose, at the end of the day. So we can meet our March and our June goals for that one. Myself and the web developers are in charge of that. Some detail about content and integration. So it's got to be a responsive website. It's got to work across all sorts of different screens. Very, very important. Continuous page. So I want a long format page, which is easier to either click down or to scroll up and down, even in a large screen format, because I feel that works very well. And I also feel that if you're putting your, loved person, partner, family member onto this thing, it's a great storytelling mode to be able to just continually throw that story. So the website's got to work like a storytelling / tribute site as well. Big time, we're going to be very, very conscious of color schemes, logos, calls to action, the look and feel of this site, so we can reflect it across apps. And there's not an app in the short term, but there will be down the track. And the way we communicate across social media, the way we do search, and a whole range of other things, so that we can fit up there. So high attention to detail for that. Progress on this one, you can keep updated with all your progress aspects, but we're going to kick this off for a December 1 start. My second one there is involving Google. So we're going to spend some money with Google through Google Analytics and understanding how our website performs, and also we're going to spend some down the bottom there with search engine marketing. But we need to make sure that our website ranks well. We're also going to get the .com domain name, because Google certainly indexes .coms better than it does any other, .net, .org, .earth, whatever it might be. So we know that that's a challenge, and so we can redirect to that. It'll be seamless. No one will know about it, but we will, and we'll direct traffic to that space as well. Our family torchbearers search needs are designed to give strong results. So, capture family history, ancestry of my family. We need to come up on that front page of that result. And so that's what we're looking for our searches. From launch, again, web developers and myself, names, keywords, hashtags, key search terms, links through to YouTube, which we know is another Google property as well, and other things that we can do in that space. And that's to be running by December 15th. My third tool is using YouTube, because people's family history, be it textual, be it audio, be it video, YouTube is likely to be a platform which can carry all of those things, even a bit if they're captured into a video style format. Plus, we can put engaging, and I've mentioned the fact there, I think, to host moving videos of people. So, just some of the JFK speeches, the Martin Luther King speeches, they're just like, people go, wow, that actually happened. I saw that was good. There'd be far better examples than those two that I've just used for you as well. But YouTube's a channel which can host that stuff. So if I can direct people to that, if I can put it on my stage, on my platform, and on my YouTube channel, then I can get people to look at it and drag people there that way as well. Target market, again, family torchbearers, but also family torchbearer stakeholders. So someone might not be interested in mapping the history so much, but they're all over YouTube in different ways. And when something new pops up, they're going to refer it to the family torchbearer, as it might be as well. It's going to happen simultaneously with web launch. I'm doing it. Again, logos, colors, calls to action, tags, etc. All very, very consistent. And yeah, I put the words there better. So more emotionally engaging, and I've said tea-jerking, but it's emotionally engaging human stories and videos of known people or famous people, and we're going to bring them into our YouTube community, and we're going to use that to leverage traffic across to our website as well. That's how that's going to work. My fourth tool is Twitter, and partly because I'm a bit of a Twitter fan, but also because Charlotte said, educated people, she didn't say educated people, but I know educated people use Twitter to find new news. So that's a really, really important part about that. If you want to find some new stuff, TikTok could work well for you. Instagram could work well for you. And I might think about that down the track, but new news is delivered often by Twitter. So my educated family torchbearer is likely to be a Twitter user, I feel. Again, not worried about the demographics or anything like that, but they're interested in new things. They're interested in some hashtags that trend there. They're interested in new news. They're interested in journalists who might post or write about the story about this website as well. So there's an analog PR story going on in the background here as well. And we're going to use that to drive traffic across to our website as well. So again, family torchbearers and people who influence family torchbearers. So they might have journalists that they follow who they think are very valuable influencers, and there's a lot of that goes on in Twitter. They might be just trying to think of some good examples. Some of the female ABC journalists do well, as does the lady actually we talked about earlier tonight from the Age, etc. Does well. A few things about timing, who's responsible. Again, consistency and drive likes and shares and links back to the web or to the YouTube channel, which people might find the YouTube channel a little less of a barrier than what my website is, where you go there and we do start asking for your details as well. The final thing for my stage 1 launch is, again, back to Google. Here we're going to spend money on Google to appear where Ancestry pops up and when people are searching around that. So I should have probably put the SEO and the SEM thing together. But we want them to complement, as we saw with Ninja Shark AU, ad space, organic result, and an ad space on the side, all owned by them, and move into the space of Ancestry to get that. And I think out of that, and this is my presumption, this is my strategy, is that we can start to drive traffic to grow this business. We're not doing that short term because it costs a lot of money to maintain SEM and SEO for that matter, but we're going to do it from January. So probably after all the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas sales, Christmas holiday offers, New Year's Day sales have gone and the noise is off the internet, then we're going to move into this space again as well. So lots of stuff to go on there and to think about that. That's just a really quick cut. You could develop this much, much further. It's just a snapshot for hopefully to you guys to see how digital properties can work together to drive your brand or service or product as it might be as well. I had Facebook and Instagram up the top there because I am interested in those. I think people can use those and benefit from them, but it's a stage 2 thing. It's down the track and we're not going to do anything about it in the short term for that one. Lastly, or close to last nearly, is my project plan and budget. And in this case, because I'm a bit of a power Microsoft project user, a bit nerdy on that front as well, I quickly whipped up a project plan this afternoon and popped it in here. And it's got 2 aspects for it. For the people who like quantitative data, there's a list of tasks on the left-hand side of the screen. For people who are visually driven, maybe my investors, my stakeholders, my employees, my agency team as it might be, I've got an awesome graphic there, which also tells the story of the launch of this brand in stage 1. So the other thing I've done here is added resources against tasks. I've put costs against resources for tasks, which I know might be our internal charge out rate. It might be an external rate if I have to contract people in. And I've got a budget for the first 3 months of this plan as well, which comes up at about $52,000. I can see where that's happening on different things. So communications is largely about a $17,000 spend. And less part of this plan, but a key part of the launch of the business, there's about a $20,000 spend on tech-based stuff as well. And then you can see with my tasks in there, we've got web development, we've got the YouTube channel, we've got web SEO, we've got web SEM, we've got Twitter organic, and we've got a Twitter paid campaign as well happening. We've got a milestone in there to go live, and milestones are indicated in project Gantt charts by black diamonds. So all of you guys on there, hopefully, can nearly pretty quickly have a look at this and go, all right, Andrew's got a bit of a plan. He's got some money against that. He's got timing. No worries. I'll get the checkbook out and write some money for him. And in fact, I'm going to transfer via my banking app across to his account instantaneously using Osco, and he'll have the money. He can get on with his plan as well. So this is MS Project Set. I just noticed somebody, Beck said, Smartsheet's probably tool. Smartsheet is really good. I had a look at a thing called Mural this morning and signed up for that one, which is pretty good. Asana. There's a few tools that work on Apple products if you're a mad Apple user as well. So if you haven't had a play with some project management stuff, then you should do that, should have a look at that, and you should be using it in your day-to-day life and your work life, and adding it to your resume as you grow your career as well, because it's valuable, and it is, again, all about communicating to stakeholders of your plan. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Second last thing here is we want to do evaluation. So we want to know what's going on here. So my measures and milestones, I've listed the stuff that's going on in here. I've actually put my goals back in here at the end of my plan, and I've mentioned in the black text. So the goals in red, the black text is what I'm going to do about it. So first of all, the Gantt chart, we're going to do stuff as per the Gantt chart in terms of timing and milestones. There's one single milestone there about launching, and there's a bunch of timing about when things should be done by. Very powerful management tool. Secondly, which is number one on here, is the create awareness. Then we're going to do the SEM. We're going to measure the cost of that and the clicks as a campaign. We'll get lots of metrics on that one. Second one about creating desire. We can check signups on a daily basis through the website, because the websites deliver that sort of information super easily, and our database will be growing. Third one is about facilitating action. We're going to measure clicks on different parts of our pages, on different properties within our page. We're going to check out minutes viewed, time spent across the website. And we can do that on a more weekly basis, because daily might be a bit hectic for that one as well. And then finally, our fourth goal about building advocacy. Then we're going to track using things like Hootsuite, Social Mention, IO, Social Sprout, etc. We're going to do some social listening. We're going to do count and watch and check mentions, and we're going to like and retweet and share testimonials to build that stuff. The liking, tweeting, and resharing is going to happen live 24/7 basis, but the surveys and the social listening will be reviewed on a weekly basis as well. So again, I've got timelines for each part of each of my goals. And somebody mentioned earlier is, how do you know if you're starting? Well, if you don't measure anything, you won't know if you're failing. If you're measuring at least some things that you can get your head and your hands around, then you'll know very quickly whether your progress is going upwards or it's going downwards. And again, because we're in this cool digital environment, we can change very, very quickly. Like a campaign on Twitter, if it was up and running now, I can pull it down within 10 minutes. I can change it within another 10 minutes. There's probably an approval time. It could be live again within an hour, doing something slightly different, using different language or getting different levels of click-throughs, etc. So that is the joy of digital. It is super powerful. It is super flexible. And when you've got these kind of tools around goals and project plans to run it and measure it, you can do awesome things in this space. So it's kind of cool like that as well. The last thing for you guys, which I'm also super passionate about, and one of the things I enjoyed about Charlotte's presentation tonight is the quality of the graphics and the pitch. It looks smart. She works in a communications agency. If they were doing it poorly, we'd all be really, really struggling. But it looks great. It tells the story so well. And when it comes back to you putting your communications plan together inside your organization, or to pitch to stakeholders or shareholders or the C-suite or whoever the people you need to bring on board might be, then you've got to be good at it. You need to invest that extra time to make it happen. You need to do a mini marketing plan for who are the stakeholders. What do they know about this? What do I need to explain to them to get them to get it, and then get them to buy in and give me the money for what I need, or give me the resources, or give me the people they need to make things happen. So what are their barriers to learning about that stuff? And Charlotte talked about several things on that front as well. And then when you've sussed that out, use all the tools at your disposal to intercept the decision makers. And so you've heard of the 2-minute lift pitch. I mean, lifts are going faster than that these days, but intercept your CEO as he hits the lift in the morning and give him the pitch on the way up, and step out the floor before he does. And he's had an education, or she's had an education, and use opportunities like that to get your message across. Because at the end of the day, for this awesome plan that you're going to put together, if you don't have internal cut through amongst your team members and your staff members and all of those kind of things, or the investors for both them as a resource to help and support, or the money that they're going to provide to you, your plan's going to really struggle as well. So it's as important to be able to pitch your material. And our format that we've got is kind of tried and tested. It gives you a platform, at least modify it, use it, but to move yourself forward in this space and to get ahead in this kind of digital marketing communication space as it would be as well. Cool, guys. I'm pumped again. I've had a really awesome 4 weeks doing this course, and lots of adrenaline for me. It's exciting. And as I kicked off with in week one, education is a game changer for nearly everybody. And, we've had it demonstrated tonight with our guest speaker. You guys are all on here. Everyone's asked some really cool questions and everybody's got lots of potential, and education is just one of those tools to unleash it. And as I'm sure Chantel will recommend, doing a master's or a graduate certificate, and a graduate certificate is an awesome toe in the water, is a very, very cool thing to do. So check out those links. I'm sure Chantel will have a little bit more to say about that as we kick off, but that's it for me really. And I'm going to bring it to a close based on that. We've got a quiz happening after this.
We do have a quiz.
Template. Yep.
Yes, there is a quiz, but it's not released yet because we just have to, well, we've got the 5-question quiz, but the exam will be released at the end of the week. So get ready for that one. I'm also going to spruik the survey that we have, and I'm just going to post the link right now.
Yes, please do that.
And remember, these surveys are really important. We use them to find out any changes we need to make, et cetera, and also just to pump up Andrew's ego if he needs that. So if you've had a great time, please fill out that quiz if possible. And we use that at the end of this to find out what courses we should do in the future, basically. I've also included a link to the course that this subject comes from, or these materials come from, because this was sort of a gathering of a bunch of different subjects all together. And now is the time to put your questions in the Q&A if you have some more for Andrew to answer, because obviously it's 9 p.m. We just want to make sure that we get all the questions answered, and obviously there's the forums, but this is the best time for it. So now is the time to tap it in. One of the questions we didn't get time for with Charlotte earlier is, how do you ensure strategy is relevant amongst different generations? And I think Andrew might have some thoughts of answers to that one.
For sure. I got a few comments on that one. Again, the question there, I get Kenneth to rewind that a little bit and say, how do you make sure the strategy is relevant is the question there. And then understanding who the different customers are and what their needs and wants are says that we can match strategy, what we need to do in the best way there, with this group of customer needs like this. The minute you add the word generations in there, you are putting an artificial segmentation in that says, oh, I might have to treat people differently, and that's going to complicate your life. And there are certainly examples where you have to treat people differently about certain things. Not every young person wants to drive a Subaru Forester. I think they are the claim of the over 70s these days. So it's a really hard thing. And there would be some generational divide on who's going to buy a Subaru Forester in Australia at the moment. But for other things, maybe around, climate change, the change of diet from salmon to a more sustainable protein-based food, for example, may not need any kind of generational input at all. So we're looking for a higher level need or want there. We're looking for people who are, in that case, concerned about, ocean health or seafood health or a range of other things like that. And that becomes the primary kind of need, or the insight, as Charlotte mentioned it. And we want to target people who are uncomfortable with eating food from oceans at the moment because of degradation or whatever it might be, and leave behind the generational stuff. It's a really difficult thing to do, and I appreciate Kenneth's question, and Tracy talked about this also before, but it's so in our media diet to talk about generations. It's so in the commentators' world to talk about, oh, this generation did that. Baby boomers they've taken Gen X, all the jobs from Gen Xers because they've hung on in their careers too long. We're like indoctrinated about generations, but I have to say, from any marketing perspective, it's a useful tool, but step back before you start applying it to different things.
I had to find my unmute button, which means maybe I'm part of an older generation. Yes, is a really good answer there. And again, if you have any further questions, put them in the Q&A in the next few minutes and we'll get to them. But if you don't, then we can put them on the Learn site. Somebody's asked, do we have to do the final exam on a specific date? It will be available after we used to have an exam period, and we've just said no, not anymore. So it will be available for the foreseeable future. And remember, if you do sit that exam and pass 2 other of our short courses, you can get a 1 free credit into the IT
Do that
Masters
for sure.
courses. Yeah, you may as well get any free credits you can if you are looking to study further. But it has been a really enjoyable and informative session tonight. I'm sure I didn't butt in as much as Guy does because I don't have his ability there, but it has been very enjoyable to watch this. We've got one last question here. What are the considerations for developing a strategy for a product industry that falls in ethically grey areas such as gambling, smoking, alcohol, etc.? It's a very interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, again, I'm going to come back to the whole who's your target market for that. And there's huge groups of people who are very, very comfortable smoking. They might cop a lot of flack from some other passers-by, but it's still an important and valuable part of their life because they invest a considerable amount of money to do that. So there's target markets out there to do it. But I think the reality that everyone's going to smoke and that a company should go, and if we unleash tobacco advertising, for example, in Australia, everyone go, oh, let's go to broadcast TV. Let's go to, again, the mass channels that Charlotte talked about, YouTube and Facebook, and punch stuff out there. Smoking might go up a bit, but they would cop so much backlash from non-smokers that it would be really problematic for that brand. And they would better be off targeting people who currently smoke, bringing them under their wing, giving them a better deal, improving their loyalty, getting them to pay for higher price, higher quality smokes and make more profit that way. So in every space, and the other one, which is, time in my mind, because as I mentioned, I think in week 1, we're coming to you carbon free here tonight. We're off the grid where we live. And so all my systems are powered by the sun today. And the coal thing, everyone's up in arms about the coal industry, being under pressure. And there's no question coal industry is going to change. And they can target people, they could go out and advertise for people to use more coal, but there's certain customers who will want to do that. But on the whole, it's probably just going to move away quietly and their target markets will get less and less. And it won't be because government tells them not to advertise to them or anything like that. It'll be because people go, oh, I don't think we'll buy any more coal anymore. We'll use some other form of energy generating power. So I think you can look at, these guys, because they're in ethically dubious areas, it's problematic from a societal point of view. But if you are in that company and you're running it, you have to look at the world and go, well, what's going on? You're going to do your SWOT analysis. What can I control? What are we good at? What are we not so good at? What's the external environment doing? And we're going to dig into that niche of people who want to continue to burn coal, who want to smoke, people who want to maybe consume alcohol on a binge basis. And the government's been trying to change that for a while as well. They've had trouble talking about sexual consent even in their advertising and their communications. There's lots of difficult areas, but people can overcome it. An interesting one, I don't want to talk about drug dealers, but drug dealers can run a business without using any kind of above the line, typical traditional media that most other organizations can, but yet they can actually do quite good business because they target in on particular segments. They use maybe word of mouth a little bit more and some social media and stuff, and they can be successful in that space, much to the police's.
Presumably they use word of mouth a lot because they're not on LinkedIn.
No, I'm thinking the LinkedIn profile probably won't work for them, but likely the rise of encrypted messages services is doing them lots of good. So see what's going on there later, I'm sure.
Yep. I'm just trying to make sure that we've got to a lot of the questions. We've got a few more, but I'm just trying to make sure that we're not going too far over time.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so Tracy has another good question. She's had a few really good ones tonight. I think that innovation happens when different disciplines thinking collide. What other way out areas would you think would help digital marketing? And as she mentioned there, she did stand-up comedy class and impromptu acting classes to help with her presentation skills. And I think that's really relevant in that it's not necessarily advertising that is the number one way to get to people all the time.
Absolutely. And I've got a couple of points there. Thanks for all awesome questions, Tracy. You've done really well. And congratulations on doing the comedy class for the presentation skills. I'm sure that was gut-wrenching, but then you probably walked away from that going, whoa, that is fantastic. Well done on that one. I think the innovation happens. I'm totally with you on that front. One of the biggest drawbacks we've got in business and even in marketing is people look in silos. They go, oh, we're in the coal industry. Let's see what we're doing. We're in the alcohol industry. Let's see what we're doing. Anybody who pops up and goes, here's an industry benchmark. These are things that really constrict people's thinking. And the best thing that anybody could do in any kind of organization is go or observe another industry, another way of business, another way people do things. And the learning is exponential. It's massive. So even if you're, let's say you're a fast moving consumer good marketer like Coles and Woolworths, for example, they could probably learn a lot by looking at how the Iconic is operating online. They might also learn a lot about sitting down with some GPs that have got really good bedside manner and really good ratings about customer service and interacting with people. So
or alternatively, GPs could learn from customer service people who are not classically trained but can meet a customer need.
True enough. And maybe I should have flipped that example to make that work. But I think exactly to Tracy's point, if you want to learn something new, jump out of the place where you're super comfortable in your industry, in your silo, in your job function, and go and look at what else is going on. And certainly for me, and I think Charlotte reflects that as well, is that we in marketing particularly, you get to work in all sorts of different places with all sorts of people, and you're constantly looking to learn about how other people behave and interact so that you can form up a better strategy, a better plan, and it's an always learning space. And it's been definitely valuable in my career, and I've benefited massively from that too. So yeah, hopefully that works. So you get out and about, everybody. See how other people are doing it. And certainly if you work in a business and you're doing business to business stuff, you've got a whole retail life that you reflect every day where you know Amazon delivers in 3 days, the service is fast, the checkout is super quick. When you go back into your work life, why wouldn't you expect your own business or competitors you deal with there to do exactly the same thing? So get out of your comfort zone, find new things, bring them back into your world.
Great. Well, I think as we've hit an hour 40, I think maybe it's time to wrap up. Andrew, did you have anything more you wanted to add?
I just want to say thank you very much for your attendance. We've had great crowds on. We've had some great feedback. We've had great questions here too. It's been my absolute pleasure to do it. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Chantel. And thanks everybody for listening in and getting involved in the conversation as well. So thanks.
Yep. Huge thanks to Andrew for presenting, and obviously Charlotte for stepping in tonight and giving her expertise, and obviously especially Hannah for her admin help throughout the sessions. I'm sure we'll see you all again soon when we do our next short course, and particularly our next short course about digital marketing. And don't forget, Andrew's currently leading a subject for us, so hopefully we'll continue to see Andrew on these forums.
Hope so. That'd be good.
Great. Well, I'll tell Guy that everyone missed him, and he should be back for the next short course.
We could send him something to his non-smartphone, I guess. Just a dots and dashes message. Even.
I'll draw him an ASCII picture of everyone having a good time.
Perfect.
All right.
Excellent, guys. Have a great rest of the year. Merry Christmas for those, and all safe for 2022.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks all.